So I'll start. Obviously, we come into 2024, January 4th. The election is top of mind for everyone, right? And everyone is seeing like news stories and polls, and they're starting to see ads, they're seeing commentary and punditry about this election and what it means. But we do know one thing for certain. Latinos are absolutely foundational for path to victory for President Biden and Vice President Harris, and for candidates in Colorado and around the country. There is no longer a waking of the sleeping giant. The sleeping giant has awoken. And they're showing it every day in their spending, in our culture and media, in entertainment, and of course in politics. A historic number of people now serving in Congress who are Latino, historic number of Latino representatives at the state and local level, represented here in Colorado. And so any campaign that hopes to win across our country, certainly nationwide, and in many states across the country, and not just in places like Colorado and Arizona, but places like Pennsylvania and Georgia, have to figure out and have a really robust plan to reach Latino voters. I want to talk for a minute about where we're at in this election, to just remind people. We have had historic success through the Biden-Harris administration. There have been historic policies and legislation that our president and vice president have championed that are helping everyday Americans and working people around the country. Of course, that includes the infrastructure bill. And this next year, you're going to start seeing in Colorado and around the country billions and billions of dollars that go into repairing roads and bridges, high-speed rail, things that are going to create good-paying jobs in communities. Also passed the Inflation Reduction Act, the largest investment in climate change in history that also invests in clean energy jobs and also makes changes like capping insulin and capping the prices of prescription drugs, which we're just starting to see this year. That also means support for small businesses. 1 in 4 small businesses, new small businesses, are Latino-owned small businesses. And this administration has provided $3 billion, an 80% increase since 2020 to Latino small businesses. The engine, a critical engine of our economy. And of course, there's so much more that you can see here, ranging from addressing gun violence to the passage of the Respect for Marriage Act, which provides for gay marriage across the country. I also just want us to talk for a second about my boss, the vice president. Last year alone, she went across the country to talk about our rights and our freedoms, what's at stake for Americans in the upcoming election. She launched a college tour that spoke to over 15,000 people. She brought people together in reproductive choice convenings, and she had over 50 of those. She took her message on the road. And so we can expect that the vice president is going to do more of that work in the year to come. She led on issues like small businesses, maternal health. And I just want to mention some of these facts. Again, more than 13 million jobs created, largest investment in clean energy jobs, the infrastructure bill, and of course, some of the many judicial appointments of Black and Latino leaders in our judiciary, which is obviously very important as we think about our future. And I have to say, of course, we're 2 days away from January 6th, and just centering what this election is about. It will be a choice. It will be a choice between MAGA extremism and everything that represents, banning books, mass detention camps, family separation, using the judiciary to go after political enemies, racism, xenophobia. We all understand the threat posed by MAGA extremism, and this campaign is going to make sure, starting at the very beginning of the year right now, that people are aware of it. Today we just launched this ad I'm going to play for you. We're voting. I know that people are seeing a lot of polls, and right now there's a lot of conversation about like every poll that's released. I want to remind people that like, we are very far away from the election. And people should have confidence in the way that Democrats have voted in the past several election cycles. In 2022, there were historic wins for Democrats across the country. It is precedent that when a president is in power, his party loses seats, a lot of numbers of seats. And you can see, for example, during the Trump midterms, how many seats they lost, including 40 seats in the House. During Obama, they lost 63 seats in the House, right? And in 2022, Democrats turned out and other voters turned out to vote for Democrats, and we actually improved the number of seats that we have in the Senate. We really narrowed the losses of seats in the House, and we picked off important races all over the country. And then just this past election cycle in 2023, some more incredible wins across the country. In Virginia, we flipped control of the House and the Senate. In Pennsylvania, won the Supreme Court race and elected the first black woman as mayor of Philadelphia. And in Ohio, they passed a measure to protect a woman's right to choose. So this is just to say that there will be a lot of polls between now and election day, but what really matters at the end of the day is how people vote when it comes time for the election. What we know is that in recent years, people have been turning out because they've been mobilized by issues like abortion, like gun violence, right? Like book bans that are happening in their communities. And these things are repelling voters and making sure that they elect Democrats around the country. Here's some other things that we included here. I just want to, shout out again to the 6 Latinas who are elected to the city council, making history. Virginia again, and then of course some other big wins, including in Wisconsin. We're seeing high enthusiasm from our grassroots fundraising. We have some incredible number of grassroots dollars that are coming into the campaign, which is a really important marker of enthusiasm. And I will just say this, we launched a historic $25 million ad buy focused on Black and Latino and AAPI voters, which was the earliest ad buy by a presidential campaign in US history, and the purpose of that was to reach our communities. For one, we have 3 core goals. We're going to define our campaign's vision and the choice that voters will face in November, demonstrate strong support and enthusiasm in early states, and operationalize state-specific campaigns in all battleground states. The Vice President will continue to play a key role as she talks to voters across the country. So she just launched a Reproductive Freedom Tour that follows the highly successful College Freedom Tour. And I just want to speak about reproductive choice for a minute. This is something that in Colorado, this is something that in Virginia, this is something that in Ohio, voters are voting on. This is a key issue, obviously, as we head into this election cycle. And so we're going to make sure that the president, the vice president, they are leading on this issue. And she just kicked off a tour to that effect. She's also going to be talking to our core constituencies, Latino and Black voters. Just yesterday, she was in Las Vegas where she was rallying the culinary workers and talking to hospitality workers because they just secured a historic win on their labor contract. And she's going to be talking and blanketing the media, especially talking to, again, Black and Latino and Asian American audiences, young people who will be critical to our success in November. And again, we have a choice this November, right? Elections are about choices, and that's what the president likes to say all the time. President Trump is the same person who appointed a Supreme Court that ripped away the Roe v. Wade right to choose. He's the same president who is pledging to bring back the Muslim ban and family separation. He's talked about ending ACA. He said he wants to weaponize the DOJ against his enemies. He's literally talked about being a fascist and being a dictator on day one. Okay? And this is not an existential threat. This threat is actually here. And so we have to ring the alarm bells. We have to ring the alarm bells. I know that many of you have been working on this for so long, and I just want to thank CGA and Servicios because they are launching this initiative because we know that it's going to take a lot of work to go door to door and to do the grassroots organizing to tell people about this message so that people understand the threat that we are under as a country and what is at stake, including our very democracy and our rights and our freedoms, if, God forbid, Donald Trump comes into power again. As part of the messaging that we'll be running in this campaign, it will be both to Latinos in English and Spanish, and also Spanglish. We know that reaching Latino voters requires a robust and an expansive and well-resourced strategy. I just want to give a shout out to my good friend Julie Chavez Rodriguez. She's Cesar Chavez's granddaughter, and she's our campaign manager. Okay, and this is somebody who also grew up in the organizing space, just like I did. And she understands that we have to have a really strong Latino voter outreach program. And we've already started that. And I mentioned the 25 million pie that we had. So I'll just say this. We expect to win this election. We do. We believe that the president and the vice president have pushed forward policies that are very popular with voters. We're going to talk about those policies. We're going to talk about healthcare. We're going to talk about prescription drug prices being lower. We're going to talk about historic job creation. We're going to talk about gun violence and reproductive freedom. We're going to talk about the things that we know that 50 to 60 to 70 to 80% of voters stand with us on in this coming election cycle. Okay, we're going to do that. But we need your help. And we know that everyone is committed to preserving democracy and freedom in this election. And we certainly want to hear back from you on like how can we work together in this. But this election is going to be close. I will say that. The polls are not, this election is going to be close. And so we have to really do that hard work again of both reaching voters where they are. That means reaching them online. That means reaching them at their home. That means reaching them at a concert. That means reaching them at small businesses, right? Like, we have to ensure that we are everywhere because we know that we have a very disaggregated media environment. And so campaigns of 15, 20, 30 years ago, right? It's like you run a TV ad, you run a grassroots program, and like, that's what you do. And now we know that voters are they're getting their information through so many different platforms. Latinos are on YouTube. Latinos are on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on TikTok. You know, we have to make sure that we're reaching them on places that they are. And so I want to commit to you that this is something that we are very committed to doing, but we also know that we cannot do this without our partners and our grassroots partners, especially those people who are on the ground in the communities talking to people every day. So I thank you for everything that you're doing.
Latinos are absolutely going to be critical to ensuring that we can make more progress on things like creating good paying jobs, to making sure that we elect candidates who will address gun violence, to making sure that we protect a woman's right to choose and reproductive freedom and the right to access an abortion. These are things that are on the ballot in 2024, and we really need Latinos to get engaged to ensure that we can have the candidates who are going to pass policies that benefit our families.